All right, everyone, welcome to the first Xojo webinar of 2014. I'm Paul Lefevre, the Xojo Developer Evangelist, and today's webinar, I'm going to be talking to you about IDE Scripting. So what is IDE Scripting? Well, let me show you. All right, here I have Xojo up and running. Looks pretty usual, nothing fancy, just a standard blank project. If you've never noticed it before, here in the File menu, there's an option here called IDE Scripts. And by default, it just has this one selection here called New IDE Script. And this opens a window where you can actually type code in. You can type in Xojo script code. And you can run it, and it runs right within Xojo itself, which that is interesting enough, but what good is this? Well, it allows you to control the IDE to some extent, and you can do some pretty neat things with it. So the first thing to understand is what you can use for commands. And you can use pretty much all the Xojo script commands, and those are the standard Xojo language commands. So, for loops, while loops. You can use the simple data types of string, integer, doubles, Boolean, that sort of thing. You can't use any of the framework classes. And there's also a bunch of other commands that we'll start to talk about that are added here to IDE scripting that give you access to parts of the IDE so that you can change things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a few examples, give you a quick demo of how they kind of work. We'll take a look at a larger one that someone in the community has made that shows an example of how robust these things can get, and then we'll see how these can be used in a few other ways as well. So let me just switch over to my Finder window. Some sample scripts, if I can find where I put them. All right, there they are. So I can just come to the open and make these a little bigger here. So these are some sample scripts here. And I'll just go through them in order and we'll open them up, take a look at them, and run them. So you can see here, we'll close this old one. This little script here, as the comment says, will add a comment header to the top of a method that you have open. So let's go into Xojo and let's just add a method. And we'll put some code in it. So all simple little code here. I'll go back to the Xojo script editor. Now, as you can see here, this is nothing terribly fancy, but it's creating a simple string, and then it's using this special text property. This is one of the IDE script commands that let you manipulate the text of the frontmost item, and it's essentially prepending the header, adding a couple returns, and then sticking the original text back in. So if I run this, you'll see this header get plopped up to the top right there, just like that. So pretty simple, but this is the sort of thing where you can start to take these techniques and you can use them in ways that will make it easier for you to work on your own code. I know I've worked at certain companies that required code headers at the top of code blocks. That's a little old school, but some places have required that in the past. And this is a great way to quickly add that rather than cutting and pasting. So that's one simple little script. Let's take a look at this one. All right, this script is going to take whatever you have selected for a string, convert it into a constant inline in the source code, and then replace your selected string with the name of the constant. You can kind of do that a little bit with Xojo now, but it creates a constant that's part of the actual item rather than inline in the code. So for example, if I, let's just create something like this. So I now have a constant string that's in here, but really what I want to do is actually make that a constant. So I can just select that, go back to my IDE script and run it. And, oh, I didn't need to select the quotes. So I'm going to redo that so it actually works the way I wanted. So I'll just select the text. And of course, if I wanted to put more handling in here, I could check if there were quotes already selected and exclude them and all that other fun stuff. But now here you can see that it took the text that I selected, it created a constant, threw it up at the top of the method, and then it replaced what I had selected with the constant that was just created. So again, that's another example of an IDE script that can manipulate source code. And as I mentioned earlier, I have an example of one created by a Xojo user that does some really extensive code formatting for you. And we'll take a look at that in a few minutes because it's a pretty lengthy and advanced script that's kind of fun to see. I want to remind everyone that while I'm going through these things, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question window. I'll be able to peek over my other screen and review them. All right, let's see what we have here. This particular script is going to go through and encrypt the classes that are specified here in this array. So this means I'm going to have to go ahead and add some classes with these names to the project. But as you can see, it's going through the array and just doing a for loop going through the array, using another IDE script command to select the project item using its name, and then encrypting it using a very simple password. And if that fails, printing an error. So let's add a couple classes. And I'll add a method so we can see when they are encrypted. Whoops, gave that the wrong thing. That's the class. I want to add a method. All right, so I now have two classes. They both have a very simple method. Now I'll shrink them up here so you can see. I'll select this window so that we can see how the script is going to run, and it's just going to encrypt these two classes here. So those match the names. And if you had a particular project you were working on that you always needed to encrypt the same classes, you could use something like this to just give it the names of the classes and then just run this rather than have to do it manually. So there was no errors, nothing got printed. But now I cannot expand these because they are encrypted. So I can't see the method anymore. And if I wanted to manually decrypt it, I could click the decrypt thing and put in the password, assuming I remembered what it was. And then I could access it. So again, this is a particular IDE script command, and so is this encrypt item. All right, one thing that you've noticed I'm doing is I'm always going to the File menu and opening up these IDE scripts, which is handy here because I'm showing you them and we want to look at the source code. But if you created an IDE script that you wanted to have as kind of a built-in command that you just wanted to click on a script name and have the script run, maybe like that the first one I showed you that added the comment header to the top. You can add them so they appear in this menu, and then you can just click on their name and the script will load and run, and it won't come up in the editor or anything like that. And you do that by taking a script And I'm just going to copy this one, and you paste it into the scripts folder that sits right alongside Xojo here. And then when you go back to the scripts menu, the script now appears here under the main new item one. And then you can just click on that. So we can see here, I can click on this, and the script just runs. It doesn't open up an edit or anything like that, it just runs immediately. Again, that's pretty handy. Another thing you can do is you can actually create a script folder alongside the project. So right here, I have a bunch of, actually I haven't saved my project yet, so I would need to do that. So if I save my project, so I now have saved my project here, so you can see it's right here. I could create a scripts folder right alongside the project itself, and then I could have scripts that are essentially project specific. So I copy a script in there. Then when I go back to Xojo, there's now two that appear. The first section are essentially the global scripts that are in the scripts folder that's alongside Xojo, the Xojo application. And then you've got the scripts that are specific to the particular project that happens to be open. All right, I think we got a couple more of these little ones I want to show you. So we just did the encrypt one. Let's look at this save all one. All right, this one here is going to iterate through each of the open Xojo windows, select it, and then call the save command for the window, and then print a list of all the items that were saved. So to test that, we'll want a couple projects open. So let me just make that one dirty, and then I'll create another new desktop project here. And I'll initially save it so it's in the right location. So I now have two projects here that are still marked as dirty, and I can go to the script editor and hit the run command. And you can see that it switched, selected each of the windows, called the save command, and then displayed the little message box here to say the name of the files that were saved. Excuse me. All right, I got a couple questions here, so let me just scan over to see what they are here. All right, so Jay is asking if there's a comprehensive list of all IDE scripting commands. Yes, there is. I'll be showing you that in a moment. And Wolfgang is asking if you can use shortcuts for the scripts that appear in the scripts folder. And that's a good question. Xojo does not have a built-in way to create shortcuts for these items at the moment. It's possible, I haven't tried this, on OS 10 that you can maybe assign a shortcut to this. In the system preferences, there is a way to assign shortcuts to menu items, but I haven't tried that with dynamically added stuff like this, so I'm not entirely sure if it works. So your ability to add shortcuts to these things is probably going to be a little bit restricted. All right, we're going to look at one more script here, and then we'll take a look at what some of the docs look like. All right, last script here is this one here. And this sets a property value for something that's on the app object, or an app setting, I should say. And in this particular case, it's going to set the short version property to match what the individual version numbers are. So let me move that out of the way. So if you looked at your shared properties, you could see here that the version is 1.0.0.0. But the short version, and that's what it defaults to, but the short version is blank. And normally we'd want it to look like, something like that. So we can make some changes here. And I'm just going to select something else so we can see that that works. I'll run the script, bring it back here. It doesn't display anything, but if I go back here and click, you can now see that it took, I didn't look at what the code did, but apparently it put the last one in parentheses. Yes. And so it worked as expected once you know what to expect. So it appended all this together and put the last non-released version in parentheses. So that lets you manipulate properties in this way as well. So Jay had asked if we've got some docs on this, and starting with most recent release, that's release 4.1, the user guide was updated with all this. So if this is right now user guide book 3, the framework user guide that's open in iBooks on OS X Mavericks, and you can click on the table of contents. The PDF version also has this, of course. And chapter 9, the building your applications chapter, now has 2 chapters, IDE Scripting and the IDE Scripting commands, which you can expand further to see the various topics. So I'll just click here, and you can see some of what I've showed you already is covered here. And then all the commands are in section 4, and they're grouped by general topic. So there's some notification commands that do certain things. We already saw print. Beep will show beep. How exciting. You can actually use a speak command to have this talk and say something out loud. If you had a long build process, for example, you could put a speak command in an IDE script so that it said, hey, I'm all done with the build, or something like that. You can show more advanced dialogues. You can open up web pages. You can control building for particular types. So if you had an application that you needed to build and change settings in between the build, you can do that using IDE Scripting. You can change all kinds of settings, targets. You can create new projects using IDE Scripting, quit things. As you can see, there's quite a lot of commands in here. Got examples for you to test out as well for many of the commands. Oops, I'll go back here. The text command is one that we use to manipulate the text of the current source code item. You can copy and get stuff from the clipboard. Open projects. You can actually run specific commands, and these are also listed coming up here. There's many of these. And you can also run shell commands. A common use of this is to code sign an application after it's been built. And this is a list of all the commands that work with the do command that let you do all kinds of things for interacting with Xojo itself. Showing things on the screen, adding new project items, adding methods to project items, editing things, controlling the layout editors, all kinds of stuff that you can do there. So that's all in the new user guide. There are, was brought to my attention, a few typos that are mixed in there, but those have already been corrected for the next release. But certainly, if you're looking through that stuff and you find things, don't hesitate to let me know. Now, one thing you might have noticed on this IDE script window is a big, the red record button. And you can actually press that, and it'll be a little tricky to show on this. Let me make this a little smaller. And then you can see as you move around in the IDE a bit and do certain things, like if I come up here and pick save, that added this do command in here. This added the new class do command. You can start to see some of the commands that are being captured that are available for your use. But these are pretty much all documented in the user guidebook at the moment, so I don't suspect you're going to find anything new. Before release 4, we didn't have any of these documented anywhere, so really this was the only way to figure out what commands you could use. All right, I'm going to show you one other thing that is pretty neat that can be used to help with your automation tasks. And let's see, I want to close this. All right, so also all of these scripts that I just went through today are included with Xojo. They're in the example projects, advanced IDE scripting folder. And also in there is this IDE communication folder that is a sample project that allows you to create a console application that you can then run, and it will send commands to Xojo to run. So what I've done here is I've built this application, and I have it created way down over here. And I have my terminal open and pointing to it. So what I can do is I have a little test script that's sitting right here. And all this does is display a little dialog, as you can see in the little preview viewer here, just as a little hello world dialog. So I can come over to my terminal window, call this IDE communicator console app that has been built, and send it the name of the script file. And you can see it's sent to Xojo, the script, and Xojo ran the script. And the message popped up here. So if you've created some grand scripts that you like to run, and maybe even want to run them on a schedule or something like that, as long as Xojo itself is running, you can use a tool like this to send the scripts off to Xojo to be run. So that's the IDE communication project. That can be pretty handy, and that's also included with Xojo. All right, and I have here a question from Mark. Are any of these IDE scripting commands available to AppleScript? No. No, AppleScript can't interface with any of this stuff that I'm aware of. Actually, I'm not even sure that that Xojo will respond to any Apple scripts in general. Obviously, that not being cross-platform, I don't know that we have added Apple script stuff to Xojo. I have to check with Joe on that. I really don't know. I'm making a note on that one. All right, the other handy use of these IDE scripts, I mean, obviously it's pretty neat to be able to, just open up a new window to click on them and do this sort of thing and run them. But you can also use them as part of your build process. And you do that by adding a build step that is itself an IDE script. And you do that just by going to build step and script. And that adds a script directly to the project with a code editor that you can type code in. One thing that I like to add to a lot of my projects is, I'll show you that. I'll talk through that step after, is a command to save the project. So I can put this IDE script and have it run before or after the build kicks off so that it essentially does an auto save of my project. To activate a build script or any build step, you just drag it onto one of the build's targets that are down here in the build settings. So if I want to drag it to OS 10, I can drag it right on there. And you see it now expands and it shows you a build item here. And all this tells you is this is when the build is going to occur, so that you can put your build steps either occurring before the build or occurring after the build. Probably makes most sense to do a save before the build. I can give it a name. And now anytime And I have it here set to both, so it would run on both debugger release. So when I run this particular project, you can see it saved it first, and then it built it. And like I mentioned, a common thing you see in these things is calling commands to do things like code sign your application. So you could have a code sign script that could run after the app is built, that could issue a terminal command to call the code sign utility, at least on OS 10, to code sign your application right after it's built in one step. All right, so let's take a look at this last big project here. Make sure I open the right one. I'll make this bigger. As you can see, this is a very large script as far as scripts go. Now, this is just doing a heck of a lot of string manipulations, and let me point you to where you can find this. This is a community project, so we can click on the community page, go to community resources, and it's an open source project. As you can see, there are quite a few Xojo open source projects. This particular one is Xojo Code Format by Jeremy Cowger, and I'll just click that. That takes us over to GitHub, where this project is maintained, and you can just download it by clicking the download zip and grab it, so you don't have to set up Git or anything like that. And you can see some of the things it does. This code format, it takes horribly messed up, nasty code and makes it all nice and pretty. It can even do things like this. So you could use a command like that, and then it converts it to one that actually works in Xojo. So it's some pretty neat stuff in here. And as you can see, like I said, this is just a really large thing. We don't really have a really large method to test it on. I have a habit of typing my code in the format I want. Oh, look, I messed this T. Normally I would make that a capital T. So I'll type some code badly. It pains me to do that, but I will do that for the sake of showing this little thing. And then I can just click run here. And it looks like I didn't have the right one. Let's close the other window. All right, now I don't know what it's doing. I don't think I have any other windows open, do I? That could be messing that up. It's possible. I do not know why it is opening up a new project at the moment. Like I like to say during these demos, they always work great when I test them before I'm on the webinar with all you people, and then when I do them live, they don't work as well. So we can try adding that to the shortcut window and see if that makes a difference. So I will go back to here, grab that, and put it in the scripts folder. All right, worked there. Go figure. Well, having read all the source code, I don't exactly know. But you can see what it did here is it fixed the case anyway that I had on those two things I messed around with, and it would have fixed the spacing and everything else that it is coded up to do. So that's an example of more complex and powerful use of using IDE scripts. And really, like with any programming, what these things can do is limited to your imagination and what you feel you need. But it can be a great way to automate things that you are finding yourself doing repeatedly when it comes to either the act of coding or the act of building your projects. All right, I'm just checking my notes here, but I think I've covered everything I wanted to go over today. This will be a fairly short webinar to start the new year. So if there are any questions on this or anything else, I am available to take any of those as I double check my notes. All right, it looks like I covered everything. Well, I'm going to go back here to my web browser and point out a few things while people are thinking of any questions they may have. I want to remind everyone that we did release Xojo 2013 4.1 before the new year. So if you haven't been over our website or haven't been notified of that, certainly go ahead and grab and download that now. Play around with it. Like I said, that's where the new docs are for this IDE scripting stuff, among many other changes. Only 2.5 months to the Xojo Developer Conference in Las Vegas. Our registration is significantly ahead of where it was last year at this point. So if this is something you are considering coming to, don't wait till the last minute to register. There's a decent chance to sell out. And if you're not familiar with what this is a 3-day conference in Las Vegas with 38 Xojo sessions presented by Xojo staff and noted people in the Xojo community. Lots of fun topics covering a wide variety of things, databases, all kinds of stuff. I think I'm doing 5 sessions at this conference. There's also 2 fun evening events, and it's a great way to learn a lot about Xojo and meet other Xojo developers and have some fun conversation. This is a list. If you go to this page here, the XGC page on our website, you can see a list of all 38 sessions. I believe they're all listed here now and who's presenting them and whatnot. And of course, the discussion forum. If you have questions about this or anything else Xojo related, this is the place to go. Very active. I think we just passed. Click this. Get rid of. Yeah, we're over 4,400 members now. And going to be breaking 50,000 posts pretty soon. That's very exciting because pretty much this forum only went online in June. So it's been incredibly active and since it has come online. Let's see, I got a question here from Jay. Was the console app showed using IPC? And that's a socket communication thing. And yes, Jay, the console app that I showed here, the IDE Communicator app, is using IPC to communicate with Xojo. And actually, I can open that up so you can see real quick what that looks like. I can find it again. And it's just fetching the IPC path, and then it's using an IPC socket to send commands over to Xojo, which then is able to process them as IDE scripts. Ramon is asking, when upgrading to a newer version of Xojo, do you have to copy all the scripts in the scripts folder? And yes, you are going to have to copy any scripts you're using over to the new version of Xojo. There's one thing about Xojo is when you don't technically upgrade when you get a new version of Xojo. You just get a new version of Xojo. The old version continues to exist on your system. So we don't do any in-place upgrades or anything like that. That allows you to have multiple versions of Xojo installed at one time. So the scripts are not moved over. So after you do a Xojo installation, you would just want to go to your old one, and then you can just copy the entire scripts folder over to whatever the location of the new version you've installed. Of course, if you put them in your projects folder, then you don't really have to worry about that because they'll be project specific and they'll just get loaded up by the new version of Xojo when you open your project. All right, well, I think that's all I have to cover today. I don't see any other questions on the board here. So I want to thank everyone for attending our first webinar of 2014. I do hope that your 2014s are all starting off well. And we'll see you all next week for our next in our series of webinars, which I'll just bring up the page here so you can see what they are if you haven't yet registered yet. And next week we'll be talking about debugging, using the debugger itself, some debugging techniques, the remote debugger, that sort of stuff. And then a variety of other topics. Pretty much looks like I got them posted right through February. So certainly go check those out and register for them before they get full. Again, thank you everyone for attending. Have a great rest of your day.